Hey, welcome back to the show. I am your host, Lindsey Bush, an online mindset, fitness, and nutrition coach and the creator of the Empowered Method, where I help busy women train their bodies, train their minds, and in turn transform their lives. Each week, I hope to talk about all things mindset, fitness, and nutrition. It's my hope to provide you with practical tips that you can apply to your own health and wellness journey. So with that, let's dive right in. So today, I want to talk about all things toxic nutrition traits and what to do about them. So you can think of this, I call it toxic traits just because I think it's a fun buzzword, but really it's different nutrition habits that we have around our nutrition and ways that it is potentially holding us back. So I want to talk about mine specifically. I think that they're very common. A lot of women tend to struggle with some of the things that I'm going to share with you today. And it's always easier for me just to talk about my own experience versus making an assumption about someone else's. So let me tell you a little bit about some of my personal toxic nutrition traits. So these are kind of embarrassing, but I'm kind of a pretty transparent person, so I'm just going to give it to you straight. I have a really, really bad habit of having some little snacks when I put groceries away. It's like I have to taste the groceries as they come into my house. It's really stupid, but guilty as charged. I also am not great about not taking little bites when I'm cooking, especially when I'm cooking for my kids. And I do that a lot. So imagine all of the bites and tastes that I take. Couple that with the fact that I also am really bad about taking bites and tastes off of their plates. So after the meal is cooked or whatever and I'm cleaning it up, here we are yet again. I also have some specific food trigger foods. And what do I mean by that? Trigger foods are things that if you're around them, you tend to struggle to have self-control around how much of it you consume. So for me, that's sugary cereal. And one of the things that I talk a lot to my clients about before we even dive into like what you're gonna have to do to lose weight, it's setting up, one, we have to create an awareness of these toxic traits that we have, right? So that's why I wanted to do this episode because chances are you might be doing some of these things and you don't even realize that you're doing it. I recently made a reel about this where like I licked the peanut butter off the knife after I was making a peanut butter sandwich. Poured a big huge glass of wine, and yes, it fit into one glass, but it was like 3/4 of the bottle, and put that, people tend to only track that as like one glass. More just saying that it's not uncommon to kind of over pour and not be super honest with yourself about how much you've had. What was the other one I did? Oh, pantry drive-bys. So that's another one. I obviously work from home, and so it's really easy to do like a drive-by of the pantry, throw a little snacky snack in my mouth and keep on going. And did I track it? No. So creating an awareness around these things that can potentially hold us back from making progress is really important. In the moment, and when you look at them one by one, they don't seem like much, right? But when you add those up, it happening, different occurrences like this happening multiple times a day, and then multiplying that by multiple days of the week, well, for a lot of people, that's enough to put you in a situation where you are eating at maintenance, so you're kind of weight loss neutral, or actually bumping you into a bit of a surplus. So when I have clients that come to me and they say, I'm weighing my food and I'm tracking my macros and I'm not losing weight, these are the types of behaviors that it's really important to examine in this process, because I can't see behind closed doors. And I want to bring this to the front of our minds because it can really have a detrimental impact. And so I think it's a really common thing that many of us struggle with. And it doesn't mean that like we're bad or we're failures, but it does mean that we need to pull a level of awareness around these behaviors and figure out what can we do to either one, eliminate them, two, work within them, or three, work around them, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about what that process can look like. But I do think that this is one step in the weight loss process that is often overlooked, which is really examining what are your habits? What do you do that might be preventing you from moving the needle? And this is one of them. I'm getting ready to start a January session of the Empowered Method. So I did an early coaching session with some of the gals that are already signed up. And this is one of the things that I advise them to do is just start to really examine, how do you move throughout your day? Are there things like this that you're doing? It could even be like cutting corners in a workout. That one's not going to have as much of an impact, but you know what they say, how you do something is how you do everything. And so if you cut corners there, typically you're the type of person that cuts corners in other places. And again, that doesn't mean you're bad. That doesn't mean anything other than what it is. And so you have to draw a level of awareness to it and go, okay, how can I work around this? So let's talk about a few of the common toxic nutrition traits that I see, and then I want to share with you what you can do about it, some practical tips that you can hopefully start to apply to your own situation. So really, really common for licks, bites, and tastes to go untracked. So, you know, you're licking the peanut butter, you're tasting whatever you made for your kids, you're making sure that the mac and cheese isn't too hot, so you take a bite, and then one bite, you know, turns into a couple bites, because let's be honest, I don't care what anybody says, that Kraft mac and cheese out of the little cup, I think it tastes pretty good. So we do that, and they add up over time. Not being honest about portion sizes. So that is why a food scale is of paramount importance if you are trying to be in a caloric deficit, because how else are you going to quantify what's going on with your portion sizes, right? So you're tracking your food, that's great, but you also have to know, are you being honest about the size of the portion? So the not being honest about portion sizes comes into play, you know, a lot of times with things like wine, for example. I work with a lot of women that enjoy a glass or two or three of wine multiple times a week. And listen, I'm not here to judge it. I will always operate like from a judgment-free zone. You do you, I'll do me. And that is totally fine, but it adds up. So if you are pouring yourself, you know, a 12-ounce glass of wine, but you're tracking it as 6, well, those calories are still consumed regardless of what you tracked it as. So getting really honest about some of those things is super important. So let's talk about what you can do about it. So what I've learned is I personally only have so much willpower. There are times that I am in a place where I can go, okay, I'm ready to break this bad habit. But more often than not, I'm not in that headspace. Willpower is just like a muscle. It fatigues over time. So when we're tired, when we're stressed, willpower tends to go out the window. As women, as moms, how often are we tired and how often are we stressed? You know, that's probably 90% of the time. So I've learned for me that when I'm not in that place of being able to white knuckle it and break these habits, I'm specifically talking about some of the toxic nutrition traits that I've shared with you today that I have had to find workarounds. So I want to share with you what those are, because I think that these are really practical things that you may be able to incorporate into how you're doing things, and it might help you start to move the needle forward. So first and foremost, if it's a trigger food for me, I try really hard not to keep it in the house. So sugary cereal, it's a trigger. It's not one of those things that like I can pour a tiny little bowl, have it as like a treat, and then be done with it. It doesn't work that way for me. It's a tiny bowl filled up once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, etc. So I know that when it's here, I'm gonna struggle with it. And I don't have insane nutrition rules for my kids, but they really don't need it either. So I think that's one that's okay to eliminate. A perfect example would be like for my husband. Trigger foods for him are certain cookies. And so there's a cookie that my kids eat. I cannot stand them. I think they're gross. They have like they're like sugar cookies, and then they have like the icing on top, and it's flat, and they have sprinkles, and you get it in the deli section, or the bakery section at the grocery store. Ugh, I am not a fan. So, and neither is he. So instead of getting them cookies that trigger him to overeat, I get them these because neither of us are interested in them. It's so weird, these things that we have, because there are other things, like I can think of this one right off the top of my head right now, the Little Debbie Christmas tree cake ice cream. Okay, I love it. I think it is so freaking good, but I can stop myself. I can have a little bit and be like, okay, I'm done. Same with like a piece of dark chocolate. I can have a little bite and be like, okay, done. But for whatever reason, that's not the case for me when it comes to sugary cereal. So you can see why and how identifying this is important, because if I had that sugar cereal around all the time, and I've done it, it's going to make things harder. So while you might be able to ignore it 50% of the time, you're creating this situation where you're having to white knuckle it this other 50% of the time. Why not consider completely removing it from the equation? Another really tangible tool that I have used is, I know I am going to take these licks, bites, and tastes off my kids' plates. I just know it. I've tried to break this habit for years. I'm not even gonna lie to you. And I have been unsuccessful. So I'm like, okay, I have not been in a place where I've been able to overcome this barrier. So I'm gonna have to figure out how to work within it. So what I do is I allow like a window of about 200 to 300 calories in my day, knowing that those are going to be fulfilled by this bad, stinky habit that I have. So I will make sure that I'm leaving room in my calorie intake in the day for this 200 to 300 calorie. It's like adding a cushion because I know I'm going to do it. That's not ideal. It's not like, I would love to be like, I broke this habit and I'm perfect and it just went great and I don't ever struggle with it. Because there's a lot of people that don't struggle with this, but that's not the case for me. For whatever reason, I continue to struggle with it and I just have not been able to get on the other side. And that doesn't mean I'm going to stop trying. I'm going to wait until I'm in a place where I feel like I can be successful. But until then, I have created this workaround, which has been incredibly effective for me. So I'm hoping that this episode will do two things for you. One, I strongly encourage you to move throughout your day. Take note of these different actions that you do with your nutrition, with your food specifically, and start to determine like, ooh, I can kind of see where this might be negatively impacting me trying to lose weight. So number one, take a look at the behaviors. And then number two, once you have the behaviors, take a look at them and go, okay, is this one that I can eliminate? Can I eliminate it by breaking the bad habit or replacing it with a newer, better habit? Or is it something that I can change the environment so I no longer bring these things into the environment, or I hide them in my environment so that they're not, out of sight, out of mind for me personally? Or do I need to come up with some sort of creative workaround? There are ways to overcome some of these common issues, but the number one place that I see people really miss the mark is they never identify them from the get-go. So they're not even realizing that they exist for them, and it's holding them back. So I'm hoping that you can take this and examine your own situation, and maybe this will help you. So if you found any of this relatable, if you think that it will help you or help someone that you know, please share this episode with them. I would be so grateful. If you have topics you would like to hear me talk about, hit me up on Instagram, slide into my DMs, let me know. You can find me at Lindsey Bush. I would love to chat with you and hear how I can help you. So I will catch y'all on the next one. Love you guys. Bye.